The village lay quiet under the fading glow of the twin moons, its lanterns swaying softly in the cool night wind. Children chased fireflies across the dusty paths, their laughter carrying through the fields. Among them was a boy named Daniel, 10 years old. With curious eyes and a restless heart, he often wandered farther than the other children, always chasing the stars that stretched across the night sky like silver rivers. That night, he climbed the old stone hill overlooking the valley. The other children hesitated, whispering that strange lights often appeared there. Daniel laughed and ran ahead, fearless, and there, under the largest oak tree, he found her. She was not like anyone he had ever seen, a girl his age, yet not human. Her skin shimmered faintly with a soft emerald hue, and her silver hair sparkled under the moons. Her ears curved gently upward, and her eyes glowed like jewels, ancient and wise. She wore a crown of woven crystal vines, simple yet regal. Daniel froze. The girl looked at him with calm curiosity. "You're not afraid?" she asked softly, her voice carrying an echo that seemed older than her years. Daniel shook his head. "Why should I be?" "Because I am not like you," she answered. Daniel grinned. "That makes you more interesting." The girl tilted her head, studying him. "I am Alenya. Someday, I will be queen of my people." "Queen," Daniel repeated. "Why died?" "That means you'll need someone to help you. My father says every queen needs someone to stand beside her." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "And who would stand beside me? A boy from a forgotten village." "I will," Daniel declared boldly. "When I'm grown, I'll marry you, I promise." Alenya's eyes widened, then softened. She extended her small hand, glowing faintly. "A promise is sacred among my people. Do not make one lightly." But Daniel took her hand without hesitation. Then it sealed. For a moment, the night held its breath. The stars above seemed to shimmer brighter, and a faint hum passed through the air, as if the universe itself acknowledged the bond. Then, without warning, the ground trembled. A low roar echoed across the valley. Daniel turned to see streaks of fire tearing through the skyships, dozens of them, descending with trails of smoke and flame. The village below erupted into chaos as explosions lit the night. Alenya's eyes filled with dread. "They've found us." "Who?" Daniel cried, his voice shaking. "My enemies," she whispered. "The ones who want my people's throne. You must run." But Daniel shook his head, his young fists clenched. "I promise to stand with you." The night erupted in war. Alien soldiers in dark armor poured into the village, their weapons blazing with blue fire. Daniel's father rushed to drag him away, but the boy's eyes remained locked on Alenya, who was pulled back toward her glowing ship by armored guardians. "Remember your promise," she shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. "One day, you must come back." Daniel struggled against his father's grip, but the roar of fire and the crash of falling homes drowned everything. The last thing he saw was Alenya's glowing eyes disappearing into the ship's light. The war lasted only hours. By dawn, the village was reduced to ashes. Daniel's world had shattered. Years passed. Daniel grew into a man forged by loss. He carried scars not only on his body, but deep within his soul. He joined the military, fought in battles across the colonies, and earned a reputation as a soldier who never broke under fire. Yet through it all, one memory haunted him: a girl beneath twin moons, a promise sealed by hands that should never have met. And then, one day, as he stood among ruins on a distant colony, he saw an ancient crest carved into stone, glowing faintly with the same pattern he remembered on her crown. The crest of Alenya's people. Daniel's heart thundered. The promise of a boy still bound the man he had become. The war that had begun that night was not over, and now destiny was calling him back, not as a boy chasing fireflies, but as a soldier who had vowed to wed an alien queen and save her world. The years of war hardened Daniel, but they also sharpened him. He became a soldier known not for cruelty, but for his iron will. His comrades often said he fought as if something beyond survival drove him. They were right. Through endless battles, through the smell of smoke and the cries of dying men, He carried the memory of a promise made beneath twin moons. Now, in his 30s, Daniel stood aboard a battered transport ship heading deep into the fringe of explored space. In his hand, he carried a small, worn token, a fragment of crystal crown he had found among the ruins of a colony world months before. It bore the same patterns he had seen on Alenya's head the night he met her. It was proof that her people still existed, and perhaps she did too. The pilot, an old veteran named Marcus, glanced at him. "You sure about this?" Daniel nodded without hesitation. "I've searched too long to turn back now," Marcus grunted. "You don't even know if she's alive." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Then I'll find her world and make sure she's not forgotten." The ship descended through a pale blue atmosphere, cutting through clouds that glowed with lightning. Below stretched endless forests and rivers that shimmered like silver. But as they neared the surface, Daniel saw ruins, massive stone towers half buried in moss, their walls scorched by fire. The war had touched even this place. They landed near the remains of what looked like an ancient palace. Its arches still stood tall, though broken, and glowing runes faintly pulsed along the cracked stones. Daniel stepped out, his boots sinking into damp earth. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of rain and ash. He walked carefully through the ruins, his rifle slung across his back. He wasn't alone, he could feel eyes watching him. Then, from the shadows, figures emerged. They were tall, slender, armored in silver and black. Their skin bore the same faint emerald glow he remembered, and their eyes burned with suspicion. Alien warriors. One raised a spear that crackled with energy. "Human, you walk on forbidden ground. Leave before your blood stains this cell." Daniel slowly raised his hands. "I seek your queen," he said, his voice steady. The warriors stiffened. Their leader stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Our queen is not for you. Why speak her name?" Daniel reached into his pocket and held up the fragment of crystal crown. It caught the fading light and glowed faintly. The warrior's expressions changed, shifting from anger to shock. "Where did you find this?" the leader demanded. "On a colony destroyed by your enemies," Daniel said. "I knew it belonged to her. I promised her, long ago, that I would return." The warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Then the leader lowered his spear slightly. "Follow me." They led him deeper into the ruins, through broken halls where vines curled across stone and shattered mosaics glowed faintly with ancient power. Finally, they reached a chamber still intact, lit by glowing crystals. At the center stood a throne carved from living stone, and upon it sat Alenya. She was no longer the child Daniel remembered. She was grown now, a woman, regal and beautiful. Her silver hair flowed like liquid light, and her emerald skin glowed softly under the crystals. A crown rested upon her head, cracked but still radiant, yet her eyes carried the same sorrow he had seen that night so long ago. When she saw him, her breath caught. She rose slowly, disbelief flickering across her face. Daniel, he felt his chest tighten. Her voice was the same, though deeper, steadier. He stepped forward, unable to hide the tremor in his voice. "I told you I'd come back." For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then Alenya's lips curved into a small, trembling smile. But before she could speak, the walls shook violently. Dust rained from above, and a low roar echoed outside. The warriors drew their weapons instantly. Alenya's smile faded. "They've found us." Daniel's heart pounded as he turned toward the door. He knew that roar. It was the same as the night of their childhood, the sound of warships descending. Alenya stepped beside him, her glow brightening. "You kept your promise. Now keep it with me." Daniel gripped his rifle tightly. For years he had carried that promise like a weight. Now, standing at her side, he felt it become something greater. Not just a vow of a boy, but the duty of a man ready to fight for a queen and her world. The roar outside grew louder, shaking the walls of the ancient throne room. Alenya's warriors spread into defensive positions, their glowing weapons sparking to life. Daniel's heart pounded as he lifted his rifle, his old instincts returning. He had fought many battles, but this one felt different. This time, He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for her. Alenya moved toward the great doorway, her silver hair flowing behind her. Her emerald skin glowed faintly, and the cracked crown on her head shimmered as though awakened by the danger. Daniel caught her glimpse of sorrow and fire in her eyes, the weight of a queen forced to fight for a people who had nearly lost everything. They come for me, she said softly, but they will find more than they expect. The ground trembled as dark, armored figures marched into the ruins. The hunters, their tall frames gleamed under the moonlight, and their weapons pulsed with blue energy. They moved with terrifying precision, thinning out into a line of death. The leader raised his weapon and his voice echoed through the chamber. Alenya of the Archon, surrender your crown and your life will end quickly. Resist, and we will burn what remains of your world. Daniel stepped forward before Alenya could speak. His voice rang like steel. You'll have to go through me. First, the hunter tilted his head, studying him with cold amusement. A human, his voice carried scorn. Fragile, weak, unworthy. Daniel's jaw clenched. Try me. The leader gave a sharp signal. The hunters fired. Blue beams of energy slashed through the air, striking the stone walls and sending shards flying. The palace trembled as the battle began. Daniel dropped into cover behind a fallen pillar, his rifle snapping to his shoulder. He fired quickly, his bullets slamming into the hunter's armor. One staggered, another fell, sparks bursting from its chest. The warriors beside him fought fiercely, their glowing spears cutting arcs of light through the air. Alenya raised her hands, and a wave of emerald energy surged forward, forming a barrier that shielded her people. The hunter's blasts collided against it, shaking the walls with thunder. Daniel fought like a man possessed. Every shot he fired was steady, deliberate, aimed at weak joints in the hunter's armor. He remembered the night of fire when he was a boy, when he could do nothing but watch. Not this time. This time, he would stand. A hunter broke through the line, charging straight at him. Daniel rolled aside as a glowing blade slashed the stone. Where he stood, he came up fast, firing point blank into its faceplate. The alien collapsed with a crash, its weapon clattering across the floor. Alenya's shield flickered as more beams struck. She staggered, her breath sharp with effort. Daniel saw her falter and shouted, "Hold on." He fired at the attackers pressing forward, covering her with relentless gunfire. One of her warriors fell with a cry, struck down by a blast. Daniel leapt forward, pulling the wounded alien to safety without hesitation. The others glanced at him with surprise. A human risking his life for one of their own. Fight, Daniel roared. Don't let them break through. The warriors rallied, their weapons flashing brighter. Together with Daniel, they forced the hunters back step by step. Alenya raised her hands once more, and a surge of emerald light burst forth, slamming into the enemy ranks. The blast tore through the hunters' line, scattering them like leaves in a storm. When the smoke cleared, only a few remained standing. Their leader hissed in fury, his weapon crackling. He pointed at Daniel. You should have died as a boy. You will not survive as a man. Daniel stood tall, his rifle steady. You're right about one thing. I was just a boy then, but I'm not anymore. The leader charged, his blade sparking with deadly energy. Daniel braced himself, his finger tightening on the trigger. But before the strike could land, Alenya stepped between them. Her body glowed with blinding light, her voice echoing like thunder. You will not touch him. The wave of her power exploded outward, hurling the hunter leader across the hall. He crashed into the stone wall with a shattering roar. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of smoke. The remaining hunters retreated into the shadows, dragging their leader with them. The warriors lowered their weapons, panting with exhaustion. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. But his eyes never left Alenya. She stood tall, her glow dimming slowly, her breath uneven, yet her gaze met his, steady and unbroken. You came back, she whispered. Daniel nodded, his rifle still in hand. And I'm not leaving again. For the first time, her regal composure cracked. A small, weary smile touched her lips. But Daniel saw the truth in her eyes. This battle was only the beginning. The hunters would return, stronger, fiercer, determined to erase her world. And when they did, he would be ready to fight again. The ruins were quiet again. But the silence felt heavy. Smoke curled from the scorched walls, and the bodies of fallen hunters lay twisted on the stone floor. Daniel lowered his rifle slowly, his breath sharp and unsteady. Round him, Alenya's warriors tended to the wounded, their faces grim but relieved. Alenya stood near the shattered doorway, her crown glowing faintly in the moonlight. Though her shoulders were straight, Daniel could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had given everything in that fight, and yet he knew more battles were waiting just beyond the horizon. He walked toward her, his boots echoing across the cracked stone. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, her voice calm but tired. "They always return. They cannot stop until everything I am, everything my people are, is erased." Daniel frowned. "Why? What do they gain from destroying you?" For a moment, she did not answer. Her gaze wandered across the ruined hall, lingering on the glowing mosaics that depicted her people's history. Tall figures crowned with light, surrounded by worlds under their care. Finally, she turned to him, her voice low and steady. "My people are not only rulers," she said. "We are guardians. Long ago, the stars entrusted us with something precious. A crystal cord that binds life itself to this world. Without it, our forests wither, our rivers turn to ash, and the bond between us and our land dies. The hunters seek that core. If they take it, not only my world, but many others, will fall into their hands." Daniel's chest tightened. "So this isn't just about your throne." "No," she whispered. "It is about survival, of my people, of everything tied to this world. That is why they will never stop. To them, my crown is more than a symbol. It is a key." He studied her carefully. The glow in her emerald skin seemed softer now, but her eyes burned with quiet defiance. She was a queen carrying the weight of an entire world. Yet beneath that burden, she was also the girl he had once met under twin moons. "You should have told me sooner," he said gently. "And what would you have done?" she asked, her tone, sharper now, turned back, chosen safety. "I cannot risk that. You have already given me more than I had a right to ask." Daniel shook his head. "No, I promised you, remember? I was just a boy then, but I meant it, and I still do. If you're standing against them, then so am I." For a moment, she said nothing. Then her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You are stubborn, just like when you were a child." He grinned slightly, though his eyes stayed serious. "And you're still impossible to ignore." Before she could answer, one of the warriors approached. His armor was dented, and his voice was urgent. "My queen, our scouts report more ships gathering beyond the horizon. They prepare for a greater assault." Alenya's expression hardened. "How long?" "Hours at most." The warrior replied. She nodded, then turned back to Daniel. "We cannot face them here. Not again. The palace is too weak to stand another attack." "Then where?" Daniel asked, her gaze lifted toward the mountains that loomed in the distance, their peaks shrouded in mist. "The heart chamber. It lies beneath the oldest mountain. It is where the core is kept. If we make our stand there, I can protect it. Without it, there is no hope." Daniel tightened the strap on his rifle. "Then we move. Lead the way." The warriors began gathering their wounded and preparing to depart. Daniel helped lift fallen stones, guided the injured, and carried supplies without hesitation. Though they looked at him with suspicion before, now their eyes carried something new: respect. A human had fought beside them, bled beside them, and refused to leave their queen. As they marched out of the ruins, Daniel walked beside Alenya. The night air was cool, and the stars burned bright above, but tension pressed on every step. Alenya glanced at him, her voice soft enough for only him to hear. "You should know, Daniel, if we fail, there will be no escape. Not for me, not for you." He met her gaze firmly. "Then we don't fail." For a long moment, her eyes lingered on him. The sadness, the fire, and something gentler all blended together. Then she looked ahead again, her chin high, her crown glowing faintly in the dark. The path to the heart chamber would be long and dangerous. Daniel knew the hunters would follow, striking harder with every step. But as he walked beside Alenya, rifle ready and promise burning in his chest, he felt no fear. Because this time, he was not running. This time, he was standing where he belonged, at the side of the alien queen he had once promised to marry, now fighting to save her world. The path to the mountains was long and treacherous. Ancient trees loomed high above, their roots twisting like the bones of giants. The air grew heavy with mist, and the ground trembled faintly, as if the world itself knew what danger was coming. Alenya led the way, her cracked crown glowing softly in the dark. Her warriors marched in silence, carrying the wounded and scanning the shadows for movement. Daniel walked close beside her, his rifle in hand, eyes sharp. He had been through ambushes before, and every instinct told him one thing: trouble was waiting. Halfway across the valley, the night broke open. The roar of engines split the sky as dark ships descended from the clouds, their hulls glimmering with blue light. From their bellies, hunters dropped like falling stars, their armored forms landing heavily among the trees. The forest lit up with the flash of energy weapons. Defensive line, Alenya commanded, her voice ringing clear. Her warriors spread into formation, shields of light flaring as blasts tore through the mist. Daniel dropped to one knee, firing quickly and precisely. His bullets struck joints, visors, weak points he had learned to spot in war. One hunter fell, another staggered, but more kept coming. The ground shook as a massive hunter advanced, taller than the rest, its weapon humming. With deadly power, it raised its arm and fired, the blast tearing through a shield and hurling two warriors to the ground. Daniel gritted his teeth and fired at its chest, but the bullets sparked harmlessly against its armor. Alenya, he shouted. She stepped forward, her markings blazing brighter, her crown shimmering like fire. With a cry that echoed through the forest, she unleashed a surge of emerald energy. The blast struck the massive hunter squarely, shattering its weapon and sending it crushing into the trees. But the effort cost her. She staggered, her breath sharp, her glow dimming. Daniel rushed to steady her, pulling her behind a fallen log as blasts rained down around them. "You can't burn yourself out," he said fiercely. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly even through exhaustion. "If I don't, we all die." Daniel shook his head, gripping her shoulders. "Then we fight smarter. You guard the core, I'll handle the rest." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well." Together, they rose as one. Daniel fired relentlessly, covering the warriors as they pushed forward. Alenya moved like living light, her energy weaving shields and blasts that cut paths through the enemy ranks. The forest became a battlefield of fire and smoke, the cries of warriors mixing with the roar of engines above. At one point, a hunter broke through and lunged at Alenya with a blade of crackling light. Daniel didn't hesitate. He threw himself forward, tackling the alien to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, the blade slicing inches from his face. With a grunt, Daniel jammed his knife into a gap in the hunter's armor, twisting until the alien fell limp. When he looked up, Alenya was there, her hand extended. "You risked your life without thought." He grasped her hand, pulling himself up. "I promised." "Didn't I?" A faint smile touched her lips, even as blasts thundered round them. For a heartbeat, amid the chaos, there was something more than battle in her gaze, something unspoken, fragile, and fierce. The hunters began to falter under the combined force of Daniel, Alenya, and her warriors. One by one, they fell or retreated into the trees. The skyships pulled back, their engines roaring as they vanished into the mist. Silence followed, broken only by the labored breaths of the survivors. The ground was littered with smoke, bodies, and broken weapons. Daniel wiped blood from his brow, scanning the battlefield. "We held them," he said, his voice steady but grim. "But they'll be back. Stronger." Alenya nodded, her face pale, but resolute. "Yes, They will not stop until the heart chamber itself is broken. She turned her gaze toward the distant mountains, their peaks glowing faintly under the twin moons. That is where the final stand must be made. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we finished this, together. For a moment, she met his eyes, and the promise of their childhood seemed to burn alive again between them. No longer just words, but a vow sealed by battle, loss, and the fire of survival. The warriors gathered their wounded, and the march resumed. The mountain loomed closer, its shadows vast and ancient. Daniel felt the weight of what was coming pressing on his chest, but he did not falter. He had faced war before, but never with so much to lose. And as he walked beside Alenya, rifle ready, he knew the next battle would decide everything, not just her crown, not just her people, but the future of two worlds bound by a promise. The mountains rose high and silent, their peaks hidden in clouds. The path grew narrower as Daniel, Alenya, and her warriors climbed higher. At last, they reached the entrance, a cavern carved into the stone, glowing faintly with emerald light. "This is the heart chamber," Alenya said, her voice hushed. "Here lies the crystal core. If they take it, all life tied to my world dies." Daniel gazed at the glowing entrance, feeling the weight of her words. "Then this is where we hold the line." The warriors spread out, forming a defensive circle. The wounded were placed deeper inside the chamber, near the crystal itself, a massive, pulsing gem that glowed like a living heart, casting light across the stone walls. The air grew cold. The roar of engines shook the mountain. The hunters had come. Dozens poured into the valley below, their black armor glinting as their weapons lit up the mist. Daniel tightened his grip on his rifle, standing beside Alenya at the chamber's mouth. Her crown blazed brighter than ever, her markings alive with power. The first wave struck like thunder. Energy blasts slammed into the rocks, shaking the mountain. Daniel fired back, his shots sharp and precise. Beside him, the warriors held their shields, their glowing spears clashing with blades of crackling light. Alenya lifted her hands, her voice ringing out in a language older than the stars. A barrier of emerald energy spread across the entrance, shimmering as enemy fire crushed against it. The hunters pressed harder, more poured in, their leader stepping forward, a towering figure clad in dark armor, his helm glowing with blue fire. His voice boomed through the chamber. "Surrender, Alenya, the core is ours. The human cannot save you." Daniel stepped forward, rifle raised, his voice cut like steel. "You're wrong." He already did. The hunter leader gave a sharp signal, and the final assault began. The battle raged like a storm. Daniel fought with everything he had, his bullets finding their marks, his blade cutting when the enemy drew too close. Alenya's power surged again and again, her energy blasts hurling hunters back, her shields saving her warriors at the last moment. But the hunters were endless. For everyone that fell, to more advanced, the barrier cracked, sparks flying as enemy fire tore at its edges. Alenya staggered, her glow flickering. Daniel caught her as she fell to one knee. "Don't push yourself too far." Her eyes burned as she looked at him. "If the core falls, all is lost. I cannot stop." Daniel gripped her shoulders. "Then let me carry the fight. You protect the core. That's your world. But out there," he raised his rifle, his eyes fierce, "that's mine." Something in his voice struck her deeper than the battle. For a heartbeat, she saw not just the soldier, but the boy who once promised her the stars. And she nodded. Daniel turned back to the fight, his body moving with relentless purpose. He shot, struck, and pushed forward, rallying the warriors. "Stand with me. Hold the line." The hunters pressed harder, but the warriors rallied to his call. Together they forced the enemy back step by step, even as the mountain trembled under the violence. Finally, the leader charged, his blade raised high. Daniel met him head-on. The clash was brutal. Steel against alien fire, man against a giant. The hunter's strength was overwhelming. But Daniel fought with something greater than muscle. He fought with promise, with love, with the fire of humanity itself. At the last moment, as the hunter's blade came down, Alenya cried out. Her power exploded, her markings blazing like a star. The emerald light surged into Daniel, flowing through him like fire. His rifle glowed with her energy. As he pulled the trigger, the shot struck true. The leader fell with a roar that shook the mountain, his body crashing into the stone. The remaining hunters faltered, their will broken. One by one, they retreated into the shadows, their ships lifting into the clouds. Silence followed, heavy and final. Daniel lowered his rifle, his chest heaving. Alenya staggered toward him, her glow dim but steady. She looked at him with tears shining in her eyes. You kept your promise, she whispered. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. I told you I'd come back, and I'm not leaving again. Her lips curved into a trembling smile. Then stand with me, Daniel, not just as a soldier, but as the one who shares my crown. For a moment, he said nothing, then he nodded, his voice firm. Always, the warriors lowered their weapons, blinked before their queen and the human who had stood at her side. The crystal core pulsed brighter, as if acknowledging their bond, as if the world itself had chosen to endure. Together, Daniel and Alenya stood at the mouth of the heart chamber, side by side. Bathed in the light of the crystal, the promise of a boy had become the vow of a man, and with it, a world had been saved.